What if entrepreneurs led the Christchurch rebuild? A question that has been asked by many. Perhaps because entrepreneurs have a special quality, and maybe because many of the residents of Christchurch and Canterbury have a few misgivings about the bureaucracy that is happening at the moment. What if a certain type of people in the community were actually to lead us? What would happen to the rebuild? Would anyone hazard an opinion about what they know about entrepreneurs? Yes?
All the central city have taken up the massive things that we're going to. The sports precinct, for example, wouldn't be there. It would be where people.
The sports precinct would not be there if entrepreneurs were to lead the rebuild, apparently. Okay, so now I don't know whether I would have that opinion, but my presentation tonight will be based on my expertise and my research into what an entrepreneurial mindset is and how entrepreneurs might lead us if they were to make the decisions in terms of the rebuild and the business decisions that we make. I've done quite a lot of research on the hospitality industry, so I would just like to know, who of you here are entrepreneurs? In the hospitality industry? Thank you. Okay. Now let's start. This is Christchurch that we are all familiar with pre-quake. It's quite expansive when you look at it that way. And that is what was ruined. And this was a year later, an image that we are all familiar with. After the quake, maybe a year later, we had Sarah, CCDU, we had the Minds of Christchurch putting together a Christchurch recovery plan. I was going to play the video, but I think everybody have seen that video and it will just eat into our time, so let's not go into it. But suffice it to say that this was the vision of what the CBD would be like when we rebuild it eventually. Well, what does rebuilding an economy mean, and what were the effects of the earthquakes on small businesses in Canterbury? We know for a fact that New Zealand has 97% of its businesses as SMEs, small to medium enterprises. We really only have very, very few. We can count by the fingers on our hands the number of big businesses that we have. The Fonterras and Air New Zealands and telecoms are very rare. So 90% of our businesses are small businesses, and they are the ones that are really necessary in terms of rebuilding the economy. But how has the earthquakes changed the business culture of the city? I would imagine a lot. The old strategies, the old ways of doing business has changed, and even the personalities that had dominated the businesses in Canterbury has changed. Where we used to have the old school, the old boys network, that is now being slowly eroded away by the new entrepreneurs that had come to take advantage of the opportunities that the Christchurch rebuild has to offer. Opportunities for businesses that have arisen out of the earthquakes are plentiful. And it takes that entrepreneurial mindset that I'm going to talk about tonight to spot that opportunity, because entrepreneurs are alert to these opportunities. It's Kirzner that said it's entrepreneurial alertness that makes them discover or create opportunities in order to pursue businesses and create organizations to exploit these opportunities. We will also look at a current snapshot of the local economy and the business environment and see whether this is the sort of environment that you kind of agree with. So, of course, the main thrust of our talk tonight is entrepreneurship and natural disasters. And I know resilience. I have a colleague who says, if I hear one more use of the word resilience, I'm really going to, spit it out, because I've just had enough of it. I've been really drawn into us that we are resilient, but are we really? But can entrepreneurship make a community more resilient to disaster? We did not expect it here in Canterbury. I suppose it was Wellington that expected it. But several recent high-profile natural disasters, and of course, from 2008 onwards, there was the global economic problems that suggest that we may really need to become somehow resilient. We're slowly recovering from the global financial crisis, but then something else happens. A couple of days ago, earthquake at the Napa Valley in San Francisco, in California. So can entrepreneurship help communities rebound after a natural disaster? Let's see what Christchurch has done and how it has affected Canterbury. So if we might want to look back to what happened to another city, we only have to look at New Orleans and Katrina and how entrepreneurship or small business development might have affected that. They have found that people who returned to New Orleans after the Katrina disaster were actually more likely to engage in self-employment than the US as a whole. And those that returned to New Orleans were over 300% more likely to be self-employed than the evacuees that did not return. So those that went back were actually more eager to start businesses, probably because the big businesses that were supposed to be employing most of the people around there were not able to start immediately. The bigger the organization, the more, the longer it takes for them to restart, whereas smaller businesses are probably quicker to restart their businesses. And why is that? Now, in New Zealand, in Canterbury more specifically, there are 300 more businesses that start every month than those that actually die or go out of business. So we're backing the trend in terms of new business startups in New Zealand. So that's something that we can take heart. Why do entrepreneurs matter in the rebuild? Is a nice question to ask. The rebuild is a hotbed of entrepreneurial opportunities where new entrepreneurs, and I don't know, there may be some new entrepreneurs here or some that are just thinking of going into business, whether they are commercial entrepreneurs, those that are for profit, or the social entrepreneurs that had started to come through, and we are generating quite a few of them, have emerged here in Canterbury. The difference between an entrepreneurial person and a non-entrepreneur is that many had despaired over the destruction of the CBD. Okay, many people went out of Canterbury, but others actually, the entrepreneurs, see the opportunity, and to them, that is where they could start again. That is where, if businesses have already been kind of really on a 50-50 chance of surviving, maybe the insurance payout actually gave them that impetus to restart, or those that were already on the brink of exiting the business may just have been, the earthquake was the reason to just go out and exit the business altogether. What does this mean to Christchurch then? And so if we have those entrepreneurs who have that self-efficacy to go and start and rebuild, and to make their businesses survive and thrive in spite of the disaster, what does that mean for the rebuild? What makes them unique? I have studied entrepreneurs for my PhD, and I've studied the ones that are habitual entrepreneurs, those that have multiple businesses, and even they themselves want to understand what makes them so. Well, some people, if you have one earthquake and you say, that's enough for me, I'm exiting the business, to have another one is really too much. And they'll say, this is the reason why I don't want to be in business anymore, it's just too much. Yet others still have this hunger, this appetite to start that, or to be alert to opportunities. It's the entrepreneur that recognize, and not just recognize, but pursue the opportunities that many others simply ignore. I don't have the mindset of an entrepreneur because my recognition of opportunity is different from that who really has a business mindset. The entrepreneurs start ventures, they create products and services, and even markets, and then they bear the risk of failures. Many people cannot actually bear that risk, and so they don't go into business. They want the assurance of a monthly or a weekly pay packet. They can't bear the risk of not having an income come in on a regular basis. So they become employees, not the entrepreneurs. Now, these entrepreneurs that start ventures, create products, they impact people. They impact how we purchase things. They impact how we consume products. And they impact the planet and society as a whole. So how would they do it? Okay, let's start with the different types of entrepreneurs. We have the nascent entrepreneurs. Hopefully, there are some of you here who are just thinking of becoming entrepreneurs. And then you have the single venture entrepreneur who will only really have one single venture in their life. They're happy with it. They have a steady income. They can support their family. That's fine. And then you have the habitual entrepreneur. The habitual entrepreneur who can either be a serial entrepreneur or a portfolio entrepreneur. The difference being that a serial entrepreneur will have multiple businesses. They're habitual. They like businesses. But they would have one business at a time. They start one business, they grow it, and then they either sell or exit that business and then start another one or buy another one or be a partner in another one. But serial terms like one at a time. Your portfolio entrepreneur, however, is one who has multiple businesses at any given time. So you have 2, 3, 4, or 5. Of course, the good comparison that we could have is the Richard Branson versus the Bill Gates. Richard Branson would have multiple businesses, the Virgin group of companies, where he had said, "I would like to have a company, a business from when a person is born to when he dies." So he's got Virgin diapers to Virgin funeral plans. Okay, you could have a business for every stage of your life. So he's got Virgin Mobile, Virgin Music, Virgin Brides, in fact. With for wedding plans and that kind of thing. So there is business there. That doesn't mean that Bill Gates, who's only got Microsoft, is any less, he is actually the richest man in the world. So it doesn't matter whether you have one single business or multiple businesses, you can still be successful. But it's a different mindset for somebody to become a portfolio entrepreneur and be a single venture entrepreneur. And it's the portfolio entrepreneurs that I studied in depth. And it was interesting because I had one participant who said, "Help me understand myself because my wife cannot understand why I want to keep going, starting businesses and why I am not satisfied with just one business." And then if you really want to know, one of them actually said, "Well, if you were in Canterbury or if you were in New Zealand anyway, creating a portfolio of businesses is a strategy for growth because you very quickly saturate your market. Therefore, what you would like is start another business because you can't grow anymore unless you grow overseas. You expand, to another geographical area or you target another market." Okay? Yet, these opportunities, as I said, from birth to death, there are opportunities that you can either create or discover. So in literature, we have, studies that have looked at or classified entrepreneurs as either creationists, the people that create the opportunity, or those that discover opportunity, which are called the discoverists. And then there is this very beautiful word, causation versus effectuation. And that is really based on this cause and effect theory. Most entrepreneurs, who of you have done MBA? Business studies? Okay. If you're doing business studies, they will tell you, you need to have a goal. Okay? They're always goal setting is what they keep, impounding here on our brains. You need to have a goal to get an A, to have a career, to become a CEO, and you work towards that goal. That is the causation way of thinking. Expert entrepreneurs, on the other hand, believe in effectuation. What is effectuation? Effectuation is about controlling the future rather than predicting it. Okay? So what they say is, what I have is what I have, and I will use that to create a future for myself. And I'll go into that a bit more later. But effectuation comes from the notion that everything is first conceived in the mind. Any entrepreneur would have first thought about a product, a market, a service, before that becomes, materialized. So it is all here. Every artifact is a product of the human imagination. So it all comes from here. Anything that you see there, of course, was conceived in the mind. And it is the entrepreneurs that recognize this, they explore, and then they explore the possibility. If they did not, we would not have the computers. We will not have the cell phones because no one actually asked them to give us cell phones. It's these people that the old marketing thought that you have to look at a market need first is okay in a causative way of thinking. All right? You're trying to satisfy a market need. But there is a certain breed of entrepreneur who says the customers do not actually know what they want. Yeah? Because if they did not create these products, you know, we wouldn't have the things that with the microwave oven, we would have been just happy to, you know, to cook on the gas or the electric stove. Somebody thought about the microwave oven. Okay? So thank the entrepreneurs for that. So going back to our local situation, what has been the effect on small businesses in Canterbury? They have been displaced from their premises. They have been disconnected from their customers and their suppliers for quite a long time. They were competing for alternative premises. Of course, most of them went that way to Addington, that way to Papanui and to the other arterial routes. There's been lots of dispute with insurance companies, and it is still ongoing. And of course, we know it very well, and certainly with timelines, with the City Council, with SERA, with CCDU, and with other government agencies. There's so many. And if you have experienced this, probably you can tell more war stories. But, you know, the small businesses have really been badly affected, much like the homeowners of Canterbury. So if we try and understand the dynamics of entrepreneurial ecosystems, they operate in the same system as everyone does. They have challenges, and of course it's even extra challenges during an earthquake. But however, these are really innovative. Most of them have put together some innovative strategies that these entrepreneurs had put together. And I've coined them entrepreneurial marketing strategies to ensure that they could restart quickly and ensure the survival of their businesses. So we have some very exemplary cases actually in Canterbury that demonstrated a lot of leadership, resilience, and determination to rise above the odds. And we have a few stories here to tell. But let me look at closely the hospitality scene, where just immediately after the earthquake, we looked at what we had in Canterbury. So we put together an initial database where just under 1,000 were in that. And very quickly, there were only 470 that were operating a year after, with 486 were closed. If we go down to the bottom line here in August, I hope I can do that, okay? Just this month, we now have about 894 premises that are operating. But given that, there are still about 321 that are closed. And that stayed the same in that level, you know, from 486 down to still 321. That is still quite a few businesses that haven't opened. And each of those has a story to tell. That may be just numbers there, but they all have their stories. So where have they gone and why? I would really like to find out myself. Interesting to see the new ones that are coming out, that are opening, but it will be also interesting to see why this 321 never opened again, you know, or maybe still planning to. What are their disputes? What are the stories of their lives? And why are they not here? So we've done geospatial mapping and looked at, this is how these cafes, bars, and restaurants would have looked at before the quake. There's a huge concentration in the CBD. This is 2.5 and 5 kilometers radius away from the CBD. So as you can see, we have a really strong concentration there in the middle. Okay? Now this is the map, and you can see the red spots are the premises that are still closed. The green ones are those that have reopened, and the purple ones are those that have relocated, and the blue triangles are the newly opened restaurants. But let's move to go closer to the CBD, and you can see that, you know, the red spots there are the restaurants, cafes, and bars that are still closed. And as I said, each of those is a story, but each of those spots is also an opportunity. People will say they might despair, oh, there's no more places to go. But just now, before I left my office, I just looked up and somebody is actually, again, operating where the old Briscoe's area is in Victoria Park is going to be a food hub. Strangers Lane has just opened, so there's a lot of exciting things. People are still really looking at new opportunities that are available for us. Now, this is quite crude. My daughter has laid a map over where the population drift has been. So if you look at that, this is the CBD. This is where most of the population is actually drifting to. That, to me, again, speaks as a researcher of opportunity, because our hospitality industry has not quite catered to where there is a population drift outside of the CBD. So if you're looking for opportunities, there it is. So let's go back to this entrepreneurial mindset and what effectuation is. If there is anything that I want you to take away when you go back and discuss at home with your partners, it's about effectuation, a new fresh word from the word effect. Okay, we always talk about cause, but effectuation. Sarasvati, a lovely scholar who did her PhD under the Nobel Prize winner Herbert Simon, coined this phrase effectuation, and she studied on expert entrepreneurs in the US who were also CEOs of billion-dollar companies to investigate how their way of thinking goes. And she found and coined the phrase effectuation as the dominant model for decision-making amongst these entrepreneurs and big CEOs. They use effectuation more often than causation. And that is, they do not really determine what is going to be the future. I will determine it by using what I have. Okay, it is quite the opposite of effectuation. The nice thing is, effectuation is used in situations where there is chaos, where there is uncertainty. And when you can predict, that's okay, you can use causal reasoning. When you know that the market is going to be stable, you can say, next year we're going to roll out, we're going to open 2 more premises. Or next year we're going to increase our market share by 10%. But in if you are an effectuator, you are going to think, we will control it, we will not predict what we can do because we don't have that resources. Okay? So effectuation has 5 principles that you can, that we make it very easy for you to understand. The first of that is the bird in hand principle. Okay? It means you start with what you have. You know what they say, a bird in hand is better than 2 in the bush? Okay? Right. When expert entrepreneurs set to build their businesses, they are creative with what they have. Who I am? What are you? I mean, are you a lecturer? Are you a student? Are you a business person? Who are you? What do you know? And who do you know? They start with that. They don't say, I'm going to open a restaurant and I'm going to put together $10 million so that I can do this. No. She compares it, Sarasvati compares it to a chef, okay? A chef who says, this is what is on the menu tonight, therefore I will put together all the ingredients to make this dish. That's a causation, a causative way of thinking. This is my goal, I'm going to put everything together so that I can make this dish. An effectuator is somebody who says, I have guests tonight, I don't quite know what I will have, so I'm going to go to my pantry and see what I have. I have pasta, I have curry, I have rice, I have this. Then I will put a meal together, okay, based on what I have, based on what I know how to cook, and who I know can help me. Okay, that's the difference between those two. So these expert entrepreneurs imagine that there are all sorts of probabilities, whereas the chef would say, tonight's menu is going to be pasta, linguine, or whatever, and then you have the effectuator who says, I can actually make 5 different dishes out of what I have. So they control it by what they have rather than say, I will predict that it's going to come out of the kitchen. So they imagine possibilities that originate from what they have. So how would you apply this to yourselves? You know yourself, and you have to be creative with what is available in your pantry, okay? What are your characteristics and what are your preferences? Do you go for spicy or do you go for bland? Okay, and sometimes, it's your education and your experiences that really impact on what you have as your bird in your hand. And it's your passion that enables perfection. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time. Okay? So what we have here are example. Johnny Swash, who's started how many restaurants already in the city. That is what he knows, okay? He cooks, and he cooks well. He's a chef. Same with Tony Astle. Okay, 2 restaurants, King of Snake, Mexicanos, Chinwag et Thai. Okay? Because that's what they want. They know what they have. They know they can cook, and they offer that. The second principle of effectuation is the affordable loss, or the one when you focus on the downside risk. Many people think that entrepreneurs risk everything. The really astute entrepreneurs actually manage that risk, and they would look at it as an affordable loss. They limit that risk by understanding what they can afford. It's not betting everything in one go. The house, the car, and everything else. They will manage that, okay? At each step, instead of seeking the large all-or-nothing opportunities, let's just see how much we can actually afford to lose. And therefore, you choose goals and actions, and where there is an upside, even if the downside ends up happening. Okay, so you risk little, and you fail cheaply. Try, immediately find a customer, and then you know that will fly or not. You avoid irresponsible risk. You may have responsibilities towards your family, your children. You don't really want them to suffer because you've risked everything. You concentrate on acceptable risk as to the next step of the process. And of course, the quick action and learning by doing is always the way to go if you want to go by this principle of affordable loss. So be frugal. The banks may not be the way to go. You heard about bootstrapping or bootlegging? Yeah? We usually, if you have younger members of your family who want to start a business and they don't have capital, the banks won't lend them because they don't have any collateral. They might go to Aunt Maud, they might go to mom and dad, they might go to grandma. Can you please finance me? The first 15,000 maybe. That's what they call bootstrapping. Until we can get it off the ground. Start small, fail cheap, fail quickly. Okay? Then we have the lemonade principle, or your leverage contingencies. What does that mean? What does that mean, the lemonade principle? When life gives you lemons, what do? Make lemonade. When the earthquake gives you containers, what do entrepreneurs do? Restart mall made of containers. Okay? Yes. So anything that can go wrong will go wrong. So if you're an effectuator, you will foresee, you will be prepared for that. You will not be surprised. Okay? Surprises should not be surprising because they can go wrong. That's where you build resilience. Bad news and surprises are potential clues to create new markets. There were people who were actually just rock climbing as a hobby before the earthquake. But after the earthquake, there was a demand for blowing up rocks in Sumner because they were a risk, opportunity. And these guys got together, blowing up rocks, business. Okay? So you exhibit resiliency and the ability to cope with the unexpected. And you flex. Be flexible to take advantage of that uncertainty. And my big word is serendipity. I have a PhD student here, who's actually just over there, who for his PhD has studied serendipity in business and found that while people think that, the more I try, the harder I try, the luckier I get, sometimes it's not really that true. You have to invite serendipity into your life and into your business. Okay? Was it Warren Beatty who said, that 80% of success is just by showing up? If you were not here, you would not have heard of what effectuation is. Okay? Or what the lemonade principle does to business principles. But serendipity may be that you are sitting next to somebody tonight who becomes your best friend or who becomes your business partner, or something I have mentioned, because you are a discoverist or a creationist of opportunity, would say, yes, why didn't I think of that? You know, this area of Christchurch is actually building up in population. They need this service. I could go there. Okay? Be flexible and open yourself up to the possibility that serendipity happens in life. Then we have the patchwork quilt principle. You know what the quilt is? Okay? You know, it's made up of different pieces, yet it becomes a whole. And this is done by forming partnerships, if I may, translate that to business. You get stakeholder commitments, where the entrepreneur or you, whatever your business venture, whether it's social entrepreneurship, whether it's just, a sports event, or whatever else that you might be happening in your life at the moment. You interact and search for self-selecting partners to co-create. You do not have to do it by yourself. You find strategic partners and you build this quilt. Okay, that is the business or whatever it is that you want to build. You obtain those pre-commitments from the key partners very early in the venture because it reduces the uncertainty and you co-create that new market with other interested participants. And that's why I put in, this project, The Terrace. Before Anthony could actually move ahead, he needed to get pre-commitments from tenants. That's what he needed. And that's what the patchwork quilt principle holds. Okay? With causal reasoning, you just presume that competitors are rivals and you have to contend with them. Whereas if you were an effectuator, you would think about who can I bring together so we can come up with a better solution. The last of the principles is called the pilot in the plane principle. Okay? It's the control versus prediction. If you take control of what is happening and you're an effectuator, then you are empowered to do what you want to do, using the means that you have. It doesn't matter whether I get lemons or I get containers. Okay, I'm going to do something out of it. You focus on the activities that are within your control. You can't control the city council. Okay? You can't control Sarah or CCDU or whoever wins the election at this stage. So, don't stress yourself. Focus on the activities that you can control. Expert entrepreneurs know that their actions will result in their desired outcomes, and also in consideration that there will always be surprises. That if anything would go wrong, something could go wrong. Okay? You believe that the future is neither found nor predicted, but you make it. Start with what is in your human imagination. You don't have to wait for that golden opportunity. Be serendipitous, be flexible, okay? And take 100% responsibility for that outcome. Remember that plane that crashed in the Hudson River in the US? Okay, pilot in the plane. He took control of it and saved the lives of the passengers. And if I may bring an example, and this is Gustav's in Woolston, the tannery. He created it. Doesn't matter. It used to be a tannery. But he had a vision. He took control of it. Okay, it doesn't matter what others are doing. In fact, people are still saying it's too far out the way. But what did they say? Build a better widget and people will come. They will beat a path to your door. You have a better mousetrap. Okay. Now, the other thing that I'd like to talk about is entrepreneurial self-efficacy, if you understand that. Okay? Now, that's Anthony there. Anthony, and that's me fixing up his robe when we gave him an honorary doctorate in April. And that's the Terrace. He came and talked to us. Two people that I'd like to talk about as having self-efficacy. Okay? Who can tell me who this guy is? Pedro. Yes. Isn't he amazing? He says, I don't know what people are moaning about. I'm 67, I am retired, and I am still operating a restaurant. He lost his son in the quake. He's working together with his nephew now. Okay? Opened up his restaurant, and now he's got a second restaurant in Queenstown. Anthony Goff, how many problems has he had? You know, he struck problems with banks, with council, with tenants, and he's still going. What is the difference between the person who gives up and the person who says, it's not me, it's something else? Now, self-efficacy has been studied a lot on medical practitioners, salespeople, and athletes. You know, they're the ones that say, if something goes wrong, an athlete might say, I didn't win that, you know, it wasn't my fault, something else. That's a person with high self-efficacy. But if you have very low self-efficacy, you will always say, it's me, I attract bad luck. Okay? So that's the pessimistic person. Whereas the optimist will always say, if I was a salesperson, I did not make that sale because of something else. Okay? Something else is always to blame, not me. He's got high self-efficacy. But a person who says, I didn't make that sale because I'm a crap salesman, well, he's a very pessimistic person. Okay? So a person that's high in self-efficacy is optimistic and will blame not himself, but something else for things going wrong. Now, in entrepreneurship, age, gender, or circumstance do not matter. Okay? They create wealth for themselves and the community. This guy here, Steve Brooks, are you here? Steve? No. Okay. He became a millionaire at 19. He's now a decamillionaire. He's young. He says the quakes created a lot of room for new ideas, innovation, and great businesses. And he said the rebuild would make many millionaires because of the opportunities in Christchurch. It won't just be the construction industry that benefits. It will have a flow-on effect. Okay? $60 billion for the rebuild. What is the population of Christchurch? 300,000? If we distribute 60 billion, how many millionaires will we have? Okay? He works hard, really hard, and just tries to think of ideas to fill a gap that he might see. He thinks it is in his blood. Very high in entrepreneurial self-efficacy. He had problems. He had problems with insurance, but he made it. There are two guys, Brian Green and T.N.L. Joy. They were just 22 and 23 years old when they started their first bar and music venue, The Dark Room. And then they have another venture now. They've already 22 and 23. And then this girl here, Elise Fallon, Shop 8. Okay? She came back from Melbourne. She didn't have any business idea, business knowledge at all. But she looked around and she thought, there's really no cafe here that I like, therefore I will start. She wanted to put together a business plan. She couldn't get funding, so she went and found some 15,000 from family and then started. That's it. And she's now successfully operating, I think, a second business also. So whether you're female, whether you're young, and whether you have no business acumen at all, you can become an entrepreneur. Don't let it stop you. When we did a press release last week, our media guy who probably communicates with you asked me for, a short release, and I thought, yeah, entrepreneurship, opportunities. At the heart of entrepreneurship is opportunity. And I was just thinking, what would be a good way to actually do this? And I thought, entrepreneurial utopia. Here we are, Canterbury, a semi-blank canvas of opportunities. The picture that I put up there at the beginning shows that there's a lot of opportunities. They are everywhere, and it is those that are alert to the opportunities that will find them. Encourage your young ones. It doesn't matter whether you're in your 60s, 70s. The portfolio entrepreneurs that I interviewed said, well, why wouldn't I be an entrepreneur? Okay, it's the best job in the world. It's the best career in the world. If I were a dentist, I would like to retire at a certain age. Who would like to be looking into someone else's mouth, all the time? But he says, if I'm an entrepreneur, I can go on forever. You can just keep carrying on. Start, because you can only get better through experience. So it need not hinder you from trying. And we have told you that, affordable loss, lemonade principle, those 5 principles that I talked about at the beginning. Even non-Cantabrians can see opportunities here. Sally and Willis Sally Willis and Sam Hooper, advertising people from Oakland, came down and started pot sticker dumpling. And now starting a second one. The Britomart Hospitality Company came down and started Orleans in Strangers Lane, and now they're stopping people from going in there because it's getting too crowded. They're seeing the opportunities, okay? So it's a low-risk way to trial new offerings. Roots had started something new. No menu. You come, you only have one dish for the night. And whatever it is, you don't get a choice. Souped up, just soup, okay, in Colombo. And it's reasonable. So all sorts of opportunities are there. Think about what you might want to do. Others, of course, become portfolio entrepreneurs where they open multiple premises. Now, the corridor principle was coined by another scholar, much better than me, Robert Ronstadt from Boston, who says entrepreneurs open a corridor that they will only see if they start a business. You will not see this corridor unless you are there. It will open that corridor. Okay? You will not know what it's like until you actually get there. So Johnny Schwartz had started Harlequin Public House, and then Mrs. Huck, the old Edisia in Addington, that shut down, saw the opportunity. He's going to open it up like a tea room. And there's drawing room. Tony Astle, Victoria, King of Snake, Mexicanos, The Dirty Land, Chinwag, Eat Thai. Andrew Brown, who's he? From George Pescatore, started from Burgers and Beers, and now they're opening Dragon's Den. Okay, Johnny Moore, Smash Palace and Brick Farm. Okay, Brick Farm being something different again. He plans to serve from a garden that he will create next to the restaurant. And then you have Jeff Cavell, who is the CEO and founder of Winnebago's. After the quake, their premises were affected. They went to Ferrymead and then opened up again in the city. And we worked with him in my class for strategic marketing, and he did the class do a project on franchising. He wants to open franchises now. So the opportunities are there. Okay? Other insights after the quake. Of course, there's mobile businesses. Because they didn't have premises, as we said, they were badly affected. You've got Pedro's, who started from a container out there by Carlton Mill. The hairdressing industry, I also have postgrad students that looked at what happened to them. You don't have to be a hospitality entrepreneur. After the quake, us, if you have a bad hair day, it's really bad. So you want to go to a hairdresser, right? Apart from restaurants, you also want the hairdresser to be operating. What was interesting was that industry also developed new business models. Instead of cutting edge, competing with each other, what they've done is those that had premises would actually rent out chairs to others that were displaced. And that really worked well. It's a shame that some of them have completely gone out of business because of disputes. But the hairdressing industry actually looked after each other after the quake. The transport industry, another postgrad student of mine looked at what happened to them after the quake. But you know what? What was the first thing that went out of action when the earthquake struck? Yeah? Can you tell me? Sorry? Taxis? Not quite. What broke down quickly in terms of communications? The phones. Okay? For a long time, our transport industries were using mobile phones because it was easy, it was cheap, they were available. But those that had mobile phones quickly did not know what happened to the trucks that were on the road or what happened to their other staff. Those that were quickly able to locate their staff are those that had RTs in their trucks. Yeah? Because if you rely on the telecommunication, the mobile phone immediately shut down. So, good to actually go back to some old-fashioned technology. And of course, there was the rise of social entrepreneurship that was really quite unique to Christchurch, okay? The student volunteer army, which started in this university. And we have the Ministry of OSAM as well, that really catered not just to the commercial aspect of the rebuild, but also to the community well-being. So, what have we learned then out of this? Quite a lot. Okay? What else do we need to know? The Canterbury earthquakes are among the most significant, really, in recent past. And it's not Katrina, it is actually the Christchurch earthquakes. We may have fewer deaths, the destruction was quite high, and it really hit the insurance industry badly. The destruction of the CBD was unprecedented, yet businesses have risen up to the challenge and actually survived some of those. Entrepreneurial ecosystems are very important. We need to provide, businesses cannot thrive on their own. They need staff, they need customers, they need suppliers. So we need to create that ecosystem. Now that we have young people starting their own businesses, supporting them would mean that we create wealth not just for them, but for others. Because these entrepreneurial people do not go in there and manage their businesses by themselves. They bring in people to manage it because they go on to the next business. Yeah? That's why they create wealth and they create employment. So, business resilience after a major disaster is really affected by the ability of the organization to look after the well-being of their key staff. Immediately after that, people need to look after their staff. Okay? Followed by the ability to immediately secure key assets. The restaurants that were able to open up immediately after the quake were those that were able to access and still have their key assets. And they were able to move into premises outside of the CBD that were originally fitted out as restaurants. So that was quite quicker and easier for them to restart. So other factors like clear lines of communications and reliable information, okay, to disseminate to the public and to the community. And we have a lot of evidence to show that organizations display entrepreneurial characteristics such as opportunity seeking in terms of their business processes, and that really means the retail practices. Okay, you can't have bricks and mortar. What do? You go online. Okay, you use social media. And of course, if you can't have the bricks and mortar, you open up containers. And of course, there is the very important role, and let me finish with that, the role of local and national governmental bodies, which are really highlighted, to help create that entrepreneurial ecosystems where our businesses and our young people and our communities can thrive. So take note, Sarah, Recover Canterbury, CCDU, Christchurch City Council, and whatever government's going to come. You know, we need to provide that. Thank you very much.